You're listening to the Really Useful Podcast, the tech podcast for technophobes from makeuseof.com. My name is Christian Cawley, and with me is Ben Stegner. How are you doing, Ben?
Hello, Christian. I'm doing well. As of this recording, I am very much looking forward to the release of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which comes out on Friday. So that is quite a momentous occasion, a new Zelda game. 6 years since the last one. I'm a big Zelda fan, so I'm super, super excited for it.
I'm delighted to hear that.
That's what's on my mind. I don't know if I had kind of a non sequitur there, but that's what I've been thinking about.
I saw, now you bring up Zelda, and I've just remembered that someone has done a demake of a Zelda game recently for the Game
which one it was?
Boy. I'm going to tell you right now, courtesy of a link on gamingretro.co.uk. I'm going to find it. There we go. Zelda's Adventure from the CDI. So it's not a very well-known one. Yeah, someone's demade it. And you can. It's on itch.io. You can download it as a ROM to play on the Game Boy.
That is pretty interesting.
And you can also play it in the browser.
I'm familiar with those three CDI games just because they've been, memed to death. And I think I heard recently that someone, like, quote unquote, remastered them in the sense that they, like, improved the controls and a few other things. And people claim they weren't actually that bad. I haven't tried them myself. I would like to try them just to say that I did, but I've heard they're awful. And also, I'm not going to buy a CDI, obviously. And I think emulation is pretty tricky for that system. So
yeah.
I'd be very curious to see someone's interpretation of that being made on a inferior hardware, the Game Boy.
Well, I will include it in the show notes if anyone else is interested in checking that out. We're recording this on what is a bank holiday Monday in the UK because we've just got a new king crowned. Not many countries can say that, are there?
That is true. I thought that it was today. I didn't realize it was on Saturday.
It was actually,
an observed type of thing where you get the day off because it was on a weekend?
It's pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah, they like to make a weekend of it, basically. In the UK, we don't get many bank holidays, so we kind of really take advantage of the extra ones that we get.
I was going to say, I was looking just because, working with people from across the globe as we do at the site, I looked at some other countries, like how many public holidays they get, and I think we're about the same number, but yours are, like, you have more times you go, like, months without one than we do, because really in the US, we only have 6. There are a lot more bank holidays, but most normal workers don't get off for them, like Columbus Day or Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Like, schools are closed and stuff like that, but normal workers don't get off like they do for Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Well, here in the UK, we don't even have days like that, really. It would be really quite cool if the children could be off for, like, say, St. George's Day or whatever. You could have all the kids in England off on St. George's Day, St. David's Day in Wales, St. Andrew's Day in Scotland. That would work. Anyhow. But no, generally speaking, we have sort of end of May, the May bank holiday, and then our next one isn't until August.
Yeah, we have Memorial
after
Day
that, it isn't again until December.
Yeah, that's a really long. I wish they were more evenly spread out. So there's I think one Monday off a month is a nice thing to look forward to. Like, obviously that doesn't happen, but that's a nice standard if I was designing the holidays for the calendar.
If only you were. So you're listening to the Really Useful Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to consumer electronics, using computers, that sort of thing, and making it clear and easy for you to get a grip of. We call it the Tech Podcast for technophobes, but, you don't really need to be a technophobe to listen to the show and join in. You really just need to know the answers. And no, that's wrong. You really just need to. You really just need to know the answers.
Need to want to know.
Need to want to know the answers. Yeah, and hopefully ask the right questions, and we have got the answers for you. Now, in this week's show, we've got a bit of a look at some recent technology news. It's a few days old now, but some big things have happened which are worth discussing. And then we've got some tips and tricks to help you make better use out of your tech. And then we'll finish with some recommendations, which usually do come from the tech sphere. the techiest my recommendation this week has got is that they have a website, which you will want to visit. But we will come to that when we come to it. Let's kick off with this version of Windows 10 is the last version of Windows 10. Microsoft has announced that the current version of Windows 10, which is 22H2, is the final version of Windows 10, the operating system that was declared upon launch as the final version of Windows.
Yeah, we see how that turned out. I remember seeing that and thinking, this is going to be so nice for us because we can just, our Windows articles can be updated over and over, and Windows 10 will just be Windows 10. And that, of course, did not happen. So
you believed Microsoft?
No, but I also was, I was a little bit fresher when all this was happening with Windows 10, so I wasn't probably as cynical then. I wouldn't say I believed them, but well, because it's kind of like I guess you could say like you can't really have a parallel with Mac where it's like it's the last version. Like it's been the same. It's been like Mac OS 10 for all that time, and now it's Mac OS 11. There's never really a last version.
Well, there never will be a last version, will there? Until there is a last version, and that's the last version. There'll be a last version of anything, really. We'll be back to sticks and stones.
Or you don't know it's the last version. Like Windows Phone 10 was the last version of Windows Phone because it ceased to exist after that, not because they updated it forever.
Well, there's no need to be cruel.
Sorry, I know it's a person. I know that's a sore spot.
So, yeah. Windows 10, according to Statista, is, as of April 2023, has 70% of the market.
That is, I can see this could be worse than Windows XP when Windows 10 stops being supported because we remember we were all there for the history of it when they pushed everyone from Windows 7 and 8 to Windows 10, and it was, hey, it's a free upgrade, it'll be around forever, all that stuff. Like, I think a lot of companies finally just got off of Windows 7 because that was so beloved, and now we're going to have the same problem all over again.
Well, currently, support for Windows 10 ends completely in 2025, but the way these things have gone in the past, and given that statistic, I can't see that happening.
I wonder, I would be amazed. I have to hold me to this if I guess this now. Do you think they'd even get it down to like 30% market share by the time that the official end of support happens?
No.
Because then it's always, they say it's going to, like this day, that's the cutoff. And then it's always, well, this business, the healthcare industry or whatever industry still needs it. So now we're going to issue emergency patches just for them for the next 6 months. Like it's never the actual final cutoff. It's always all these exceptions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, one of the big problems that Microsoft have had in the past was, and this isn't such a problem now, but one of the reasons they've had issues, and this is then fed into decision-making in IT departments and directorates of corporations and public service bodies over the years, is with Internet Explorer. I think it was Internet Explorer 6 that everything had to work with, everything had to run through. Anything that had HTML in it, it had to use Internet Explorer 6 and thereby had to adhere to the very rigid, I'll say standards in air quotes, because every other browser was using completely different standards that had been agreed by the W3C, but not Internet Explorer. And I think that, and the fact that that version of Internet Explorer and later version of Internet Explorer were kind of sort of backwards compatible, but they were baked into Windows as well, made it very difficult for corporate and organizational in-house app developers to make software without there having to be a big foothold in Internet Explorer. And I think this has caused a lot of problems going forwards for Microsoft, because people are now reluctant to move from an operating system to a new operating system because of perceived issues with compatibility.
Yeah, that is a good point. And that was also back when the latest version of Internet Explorer was more tied to the Windows version itself. Not really with XP, I guess, but like we've talked about before with IE6 being so dominant at the time that you basically had to have it because of all those ActiveX apps, web apps that were built for, commerce or whatever. So hopefully, like Internet Explorer being a thing of the past now, basically will kind of untether it from Windows versions. It hasn't been as big of a concern, you're right, since at least Windows 10, but It is wild to think that, I mean, Windows 10 is already 8 years old. It feels like it just came out a little bit ago, but it's
Wow,
getting
yeah.
up there. Like 2015 was a fairly long time ago
Yeah.
in technology years.
Yeah. Well, in real years as well, I had one fewer children in 2015 than I do
Yeah, I
now.
wasn't even out of college yet, so I mean
Whoa.
that's like
There you
like
go.
you think it just came out. Like I remember because I wrote for Windows a lot and I wasn't able to upgrade because I had my college provided laptop at the time, and then we weren't able to upgrade yet because they wanted to keep it stable, obviously. And I'm like, I hope I still have things to write about even when I can't access Windows 10.
We will move on. ChatGPT. We talked about this a few weeks ago, that the ChatGPT chatbot was banned in Italy due to data protection concerns. However, that has now changed and access to ChatGPT has been restored. OpenAI said it had successfully addressed or clarified the issues that were raised with it. The Italian data protection authority is known as Garante, and they had accused OpenAI of failing to check the age of ChatGPT's users, who are supposed to be aged 13 or above. The regulator, Garante, told the BBC, for this is where I'm getting the news from, it welcomed the measures OpenAI implemented, but called for even more compliance, and that implementing an age verification system and planning and conducting an information campaign to inform Italians of what happened, as well as of their right to opt out from the processing of their personal data for training algorithms, and that there's going to be continued observation of what ChatGPT and OpenAI are doing with people's data, which is kind of interesting. There is a whole privacy and copyright aspect to ChatGPT that hasn't really been investigated, really, has it? People have been, well, wow, it can do this. Oh, it can do this. Well, it can do that. But really, there is a lot more to it that needs deeper consideration, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that are just kind of backlogged, I think, by governing authorities or just even websites deciding how much they're going to use AI, just because it's not really clear what the legal implications are, since this is a whole new world. Like with AI art, as an example, we may have talked about before, that when you tell it to draw something in the style of so and so, or even just say, draw a picture of this fictional character or whatever, it could be, quote, being inspired by an actual artist online without saying, hey, I use this person's style of art to learn from. And then that's sort of borderline plagiarism, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe not plagiarism, but there's definitely a lot of questions about it, in addition to the privacy, like you said.
I would like this to be the podcast where I finally announce that Elon Musk has launched a cologne, but sadly not. A lot of people have been complaining about Twitter over the past few months since Elon Musk took over, and it's changed. In some ways it's better, in some ways it feels a little more fractious and perhaps less robust than it did before. There are plenty of alternatives that you can check out and leave Twitter behind, fly the nest, as it were. I'm going to give you a list of them now that I've checked out over the past few weeks, and then we'll have a little chat about some of them. Now, Substack Notes is a kind of a Twitter angle of Substack, the newsletter, blogging, podcasting platform. Subscribers would need to pay to read your tweets. If you had a following on Substack and people paid to follow you, then they would pay to read the notes. But what I've seen of that is surprisingly good, actually. There is Post. This is a very Twitter-like environment, but it allows long-form content. And it was set up by former Waze CEO Noam Bardin, who posed the question, remember when social media was fun? Post is surprisingly straightforward to use. You just go in and you post. It resembles the old Twitter, which is kind of nice in some ways.
You have the nostalgia for how it used to look.
Exactly,
in the
yeah,
simpler days.
yeah. We've got Ether, which is a sort of cross between Discord and Mastodon. It describes itself as an open source, self-governing communities with auditable moderation and mod elections. It's less of a microblog and more of a discussion area. But this is key thing. There are several key features, but this is the main one. There is no server. It's all peer-to-peer. So that's kind of interesting and different. Another one we've got is Clubhouse, which is it's not microblogging. You see, there's another aspect to Twitter which a lot of people forget about. Although they're often taking part, and you can just tune in and listen at any time. That's Twitter Spaces, kind of like live podcasts and discussions or whatever. Clubhouse is the originator of that kind of conversation, a live chat that you have through your phone. And if the Twitter Spaces is something that you like about Twitter, but you're getting a bit tired of Twitter, you could check out Clubhouse if you haven't already. Micro.blog is very much a micro blog, ideal for short posts and also for long posts, and it also makes it easy to engage with readers, but it does come with a $5 fee. There is a 30-day free trial if you want to try it out, though. Now, I was a little bit in two minds to retain this, but because it's popular in some groups, I've left in Mastodon, which is an open source Twitter alternative that offers greater control over what you see and the conversations you have. Now, I've played with Mastodon a few times over the years, and to be honest with you, I'm not that keen on it. I don't find that it is all that it's cracked up to be. It's never going to take over from Twitter. Basically, that's not going to happen with Mastodon. Gab is another alternative. It's known as the alt-right alternative to Twitter and was formed as an antidote to what CEO Andrew Tauber described as the entirely left-leaning big social monopoly. And of course, with Elon Musk now in charge of Twitter, that's not really a selling point for Gab. Getter comes from a similar sort of angle. It's a marketplace of ideas and gives you multiple sign-up options from phone or email to Google, LinkedIn, Twitch, even Twitter. And it's easy to use, and you can think of it as a sort of less conservative Gab or Parler. Parler's not in this list because it's been sold. But if you use Parler, Getter's a bit like that, but less conservative. Co-host, a social network that is still in its early days and has a slow sign-up process. So at the time of looking into all of these, you couldn't actually sign up particularly easily without waiting for a long time. But it has pledged that it will never sell data, sell ads, or sell the company to anyone who might change these policies to make a quick buck. Next, we've got Counter Social, which aims to offer its community 4 unique protections: deep face protection, bot sentinel integration, identity breach alerts, and fact layer integration. Basically, if you're concerned about security and privacy and how various technology has developed over the past few years, then Counter Social, the clue's in the name, is there to tackle that for you. Accounts can have a 500 character limit per post. You can share media, and there's also a VR metaverse attached to it, along with some other paid options. I think that's probably a little bit overkill though, but it's worth checking out. Now, WT Social was conceived by Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales, and it's kind of it only has a browser-based interface, but it's kind of a sort of a cerebral Twitter, if you like. It's an intelligent discourse that you can take part in. It's kind of I like it, but I wouldn't be able to use it all the time because I kind of like Twitter, to be honest with you. And there's another one that's in private beta at the moment called Blue Sky Social, which again has slow approvals, and it aims to give creators independence from platforms, developers the freedom to build, and users a choice in their experience. That may come along in the next few months, but time will tell on that. So ultimately, there are 11 active Twitter alternatives that you can check out now.
Do you actively use any of these, or do you have a preference? I know you mentioned for some of them. If you had to pick a favorite.
If I had to pick a favorite of those, I'm really keen on Substack, but I don't have any followers on Substack. So using Substack Notes, I was really impressed by how easy it was to use and just get started with. So I would veer towards that, but I've also found Getter was kind of okay as well. It wasn't too. This is an updated article that I'm reading from, and the original version of this had Parler in it as well as Gab and Getter. And of those, I found Getter the easiest and less it just felt what I perceived, and because it's a very US based platform, Getter, it just felt like a typical American conversation to me. Whereas Gab and Parler both felt a little more right wing than I would be comfortable with normally. If that
Okay.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I don't think my. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go on. No, go on.
I don't. Reading through this list, I mean, some of these sound interesting. I don't really think I would use any of them myself. I'm not really interested in adding any more social media to my life. Like most of the ones that I use, I only use because I've been using them for years, so I'm like in the habit of it. I mean, I do like, using Twitter to keep. Excuse me. I do like using Twitter to keep up with, bands I like or personalities or whatever. Like that's kind of how I just keep a finger on the pulse of things, but I'm not looking to add more. I've never understood the appeal of like the Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces model. Like I don't know why I'd want to talk to random people and like not have a turn to, like, it's just odd to me. So some of these are interesting, but yeah, I agree. I'm just not interested in new sites. Not that doesn't mean that I think the old ones are better because they're older, just that I'm not, I'd like to spend less time on social apps.
I think if you're one of these people who has a following on Twitter and you maybe already have a Substack, then Substack Notes is probably the one to switch to. I think it's a really flexible sort of integration of that sort of micro plugin angle with everything else that Substack does. So if that was the one you were going to go for, I would go for that. And if you were dead set on leaving Twitter and going to Mastodon, then no one's going to change your mind. You're not going to have a great time there. I'll be honest. But, no one's going to change your mind, so off you pop. But generally speaking, none of these does anything significantly different or better to Twitter other than Substack Notes, which has that other angle that's already, it's already a well-used I call it a newsletter platform. It's not really. It's so much more than it's not a newsletter, plugin, podcasting, whatever. It's all in there with Substack. So that's the only one that really has anything significant to offer as an alternative to Twitter to the rest of these, really, in my opinion. Maybe WT Social an outsider because of the more intelligent level of discourse, I suppose. And I mean, that sounds a little bit elitist, and it's not meant to sound that, but to be honest with you, if you went there and engaged with the conversation, you'd probably find that possibly quite an apt descriptor. But we'll move on, shall we, to 4 reasons, Ben, why you should not buy a smart TV. Because, after all, they're expensive, and are they really worth it?
Yeah, we'll have to find out. So I think this article is sort of slightly misnamed because when it was originally written, before I started updating it, smart TVs weren't as ubiquitous as they are now. Like now that anyone can go and get a 4K smart TV for $300, it's not as big of a deal. But I think it's more cautions of why you might not want to get a smart TV, or that you shouldn't buy a particular TV for its smart features, is maybe a more apt way to put it.
Yeah.
So just so everyone's on the same page, if you're not aware, a smart TV is just any TV that can get on the internet itself, meaning that there has apps like Netflix that are built into the TV, and you don't need to have a external box like a Roku to get online with your TV. So the 4 major points we can go through here. So the first one is that smart TV security and privacy risks are a real concern. Any device that can get on the internet and contributes to the Internet of Things, I don't know if that's still even used, but that phrase, meaning that's just a device that's online, that's not a computer or a phone, basically. The FBI in the US has issued warnings about the privacy risks of smart TVs in the past. Most of them use a feature called automatic content recognition, or ACR, and that basically tracks what you're watching. So if it knows that you like certain kinds of shows, or it knows that you fall into a certain age group or whatever, your TV can use that to show you more relevant ads, as of course the dystopia of ad marketing continues. But there's also security updates too. So a lot of smart TVs maybe don't get updates for a super long time. And so if the manufacturer stops updating it, then you have an outdated device on your network, and that could become a weak point, even if you keep everything else up to date. And also, most smart TVs have microphones on their remote. Some have cameras, not all of them. Same issue there, where if your device is out of support, that's a lot of data that you're potentially giving over to someone who breached the network, or just the TV maker itself to watch TV. Next major point is that other streaming devices are just better. So the main draw of smart TVs is being able to watch streaming apps and YouTube, Netflix, Hulu on your TV directly. But you can get a lot more from an alternative device. So generally, their remotes are better. Something like the Roku remote. Their voice assistants are probably better than what your TV offers. And the great thing is that you can take those platforms elsewhere. So if your TV stops working or is no longer up to date with security patches or whatever, you can take your existing Apple TV or Amazon Fire Stick or whatever and use it on a new TV. And it's the same experience. It'll probably keep getting updates for longer. What was one of the other points here? I'm losing myself. They also offer better integration with your existing devices. So, like an Apple TV, obviously makes it really easy to cast from your phone to the Apple TV, similar with Chromecast or those devices, whereas your smart TV might not have those features built in. Third is that smart TVs have inefficient interfaces. You probably done this where like trying to type something on your smart TV's remote is like absolutely miserable. You have to hit a bunch of buttons and directions, to type something. So that sucks. Some newer TVs have this a bit better. My LG TV actually has like a pointer function. So if you shake the remote, you can actually point at the TV like you're using a mouse, which makes it a little bit better, but it's still not as ideal as just, using a mouse or your finger on your phone. So that part kind of stinks. Like trying to navigate around is just very tedious with a TV remote. And then finally, my last point was that smart TV performance is often unreliable. I've had a Samsung TV and now I have my LG one, and the LG one's better, but I still have had bugs with both. Things freeze up, apps crash, that kind of thing. I've had issues with YouTube where it always resets my resolution. On my old TV, the speed up function didn't work on YouTube when they added it. So like they added it finally to TVs. And then if you selected anything beyond 1x speed, it would play the video faster, but didn't play the audio. So it was basically pointless. And all this really isn't a surprise because smart TVs are not the most popular device that people use to watch YouTube, Netflix, that kind of thing. So obviously companies are going to spend their time on their web app and their smartphone apps, that sort of thing. So it's in all, with a smart TV, you're probably going to buy one when you buy a TV because that's just what's on the market right now. But it's important to realize these potential drawbacks before you buy one. Keep that in mind. If you do choose to buy one, keep that in mind for which TV you buy. You want to buy one that's going to get updates for a while and one where you like the OS that's not a pain to use every time you want to watch something.
A few weeks ago, I reviewed, and I probably mentioned it on the podcast. I don't remember, but I must have done because I was surprised at how good it was, actually. A new TV, a Samsung TV that I bought for a specific purpose, which was basically the fact that I was offered the opportunity to review an Android TV box, but it was in 4K and I didn't have a 4K TV. So I went and bought a new 4K TV, which was the Samsung QE43Q60B. And I was surprised. I was really, really surprised at how lovely it is. I got an absolutely smashing picture, particularly with the 4K stuff, obviously. But, with less than 4K, you don't get much 2K, do you really? Largely speaking, things have jumped from sort of full HD to 4K in terms of media releases and what have you. So the 4K looks amazing. The 1080p looks good. It's got beautiful black tones on it as well, which is very important with TVs these days, I feel. But most importantly, it does have a bit of a drawback. It's not very good at input select. It has difficulty detecting my Steam Deck.
Okay.
I find very, very irritating. It'll find...
Yeah, I've had problems with HDMI CEC, which is called 10 different things on 10 different TV brands. But it's that feature where, when you turn your
integrated
your
remote control thing.
Yeah. It's really nice, but it does just get screwed up pretty often. I usually I keep it on for like my systems I don't play as often, but like for my PS5, like if I have to turn my screen off, I don't want my PlayStation to shut off too. So it's useful, but also pretty clunky in many situations.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, those reasons why you shouldn't buy a smart TV, and with the differences with how the idea sort of evolved, and what a smart TV does, a regular TV doesn't. it's probably worth pointing out that I have, and I'll include it in the show notes, there's a look at dumb TVs. You can buy a dumb TV still, but they're called monitors, and you need to buy external speakers. Well, we've made it to that part of the show where we offer you our recommendation, something that we've experienced and enjoyed, usually with a tech angle. And he says, and then we give you the bit of a spiel about it, why we liked it, and links to it in the show notes, and why you might want to check it out yourself. Who's going first, Ben, me or you?
How about you go first? Because I feel like I've been talking our listeners' ears off.
This isn't a techie thing, but it does have a website, as I mentioned earlier, and for that reason alone, I feel it qualifies. At the weekend, as mentioned in the intro, it's been the coronation. My wife and I kind of ignored that. Not for any Republican reasons, but basically because my wife is a local councillor, and there was an election on Thursday, and I booked a night away for Friday night because I knew she'd need the rest after the election. So we went to York, which is one of the few cities, beg your pardon, in the UK that has a fudge kitchen.
Like a place where they make their own fudge.
They make their own fudge. Yeah, basically. And so there's one in York. If you're familiar with the UK, you will notice a theme to these cities. York, Bath, Windsor, Canterbury, Cambridge, and Edinburgh all have a fudge kitchen. Okay? And so that it's basically a chain of boutique fudge makers. Okay? And they make the fudge on huge marble tables in front of you. And you can watch them making it, and you can watch it setting. You can even get some warm fudge to eat after they've made it. And it's absolutely delicious. It really, really is stunningly delicious how nice this fudge is. Sometimes with fudge, it has a bit of a sort of a bitty, grainy quality. But because of the manufacturing technique that they use, manufacturing is not the best term here, but because of the technique that they use here, you don't get that bittiness to it. It's almost perfectly smooth. Absolutely delicious. And even better, they do dairy-free fudge as well, using oat milk. So if you're a vegan or if you have a dairy allergy like my little girl does, then that's like it's like an added bonus, because the fudge is absolutely stunningly delicious. They've got a whole range of flavors, and yes, they are getting free advertising right now, but I feel it's worth it to spread the word. I was first told about the fudge kitchen about 15 years ago, and I couldn't believe it until I tried it, how nice it really is. And of course, the great thing. Now, I'm not going to say that it's a good idea to order fudge from the UK and then have it shipped to the United States, because it might have dried out by the time it gets there.
I think that would be lost in the journey.
But if you're in the UK, or if you're visiting the UK and you're going to one of those great cities, which are all great tourist destinations, and I think nearly all of them have Roman connections as well. I don't know why. Certainly the first two do. It's definitely worth checking out the Fudge Kitchen, and you can find out more about it at fudgekitchen.co.uk.
That does sound quite yummy. I don't think I've ever really been anywhere where they have that kind of thing where you're watching them make fudge in front of you. I've been to a few places that make their own fudge, and like they have a bunch of fudge in the little display case, but I don't think I've ever had that like open experience where they're crafting it. That sounds good. I haven't had fudge in a while, come to think of it.
So anyway, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, so my recommendation is actually kind of a split one, so I'll cover both and explain why. So the first half of my recommendation is a game. It is Bowser's Fury on Nintendo Switch, and so this game is actually part of a re-release of a different game. So there was a game on the Wii U, which as we know didn't perform too well, called Super Mario 3D World. And if you know anything about Mario, the games are kind of split between the 3D titles like Mario 64 and Mario Galaxy that have a couple of open levels with lots of objectives, And then there's the more straightforward Mario games like the 2D ones where you're just trying to get to the end of the stage.
Yeah.
Mario 3D World is kind of a combination of those two where you can move in 3D, but it's level-based objectives where you're trying to get to the end and not like open-ended stuff like Mario 64. So I played this game on Wii U. It's a good game. I recommend it. And a couple years ago, Nintendo re-released Super Mario 3D World on the Switch. And when they did, in that package, they bundled in a new game called Bowser's Fury. And it is a short, it's like very short. I 100% of it in maybe 3 or 4 hours. It's a very short, open world-ish type game where the plot in a Mario game, the setup is that Bowser has been corrupted by something. And so he's giant. You're on a lake with a bunch of different islands, and it sort of mixes the open-ended Mario of going to the different islands, and then the level-based Mario of completing challenges on those islands. And every so often, Bowser wakes up, starts attacking you, and you have to grab one of the collectibles in the game. The cat shines, they're called, to set him back. So Bowser's Fury is really solid. I'm really glad I played it. It's short, it's sweet. It's not super difficult, but it's fun. It's dense. There's a lot to find. It's just a well-crafted experience. But I didn't want to pay full price for it because I already played 3D World, wasn't interested in playing it again. And as Nintendo games never go on sale, I wasn't paying full price for it. So the second half of my recommendation is GameFly. So this is a US service. I'm not sure if the UK has a similar one, but GameFly surprisingly still exists, and it is a video game rental service. So
Whoa, what?
Similar to, yeah, if it still exists. I remember actually one of my earliest articles on the site was places you can rent games, and GameFly was the only one I knew about, but I looked up other ones at the time. This was, years ago. So it's kind of like DVD Netflix was, or that's going out the window soon too, where you sign up for an account, and they have different accounts where you can have 2 games out at once or whatever. And then you have a queue where you add a bunch of games that you want to play, and then as they become available, they'll ship you a game in a package. You play it as much as you want. There's no like return date. When you're done with it, you ship it back to them, and then they send you your next game. And you just pay a monthly fee for the use of the service. So whether you're playing 1 game a month or 5 games a month, you don't pay any more. It's just the cost of the service. So
Yeah.
it was really nice. There was a month free trial that I used, so I got to play it for free. But I think that the prices go from like $10 a month for their basic plan to like $20 a month maybe. So it depends on how many games you'd want to rent at a time. And they have both new games and older ones too. So if you're looking for like PS3 or even like older Game Boy Advance games, I think those are on there too. And the process is really easy too. They ship it to you in like a papery, like CD sized envelope, and then you rip part of it off to get the game out. And then when you send it back, there's like another flap that you pull an adhesive off and then just seal it. So it's really, really easy. You just drop it in the mailbox. So I know game rentals aren't as popular now with like PlayStation Plus and Game Pass and all those subscription services, but if there's ever a game you want to play that you don't want to pay full price for, especially a Nintendo one, GameFly might be a good option to play it for less. So I recommend, if you check it out, definitely play Bowser's Fury if you have a Switch. But yeah, it's worth it for other games too.
That's insane that you can still do that.
I know. I'm really surprised. I wonder what their earnings are like, because I'm really surprised that they're still around, and people still want to do that. I guess with games becoming more expensive, and it's nice that there's no return date, because then if you rent a long game, you don't have to feel like I have to beat this in 2 weeks and then send it back. Like if it takes you 2 months to beat a game, if it's $15 a month, you still only paid $30 compared to paying $60 or $70 for the game brand new. So
yeah.
Would you use something like that, or?
I don't know, because I'm not. I'm out of the whole. That's not in my mindset anymore, is it? You know what I mean? So it's not
Playing
really,
new games, yeah.
Yeah, that's so strange. I'd have to.
Well, that's how I am too. I rarely, like saying at the start that I was excited about Zelda, that's an exception. Like I rarely buy brand new games, partially because I have so many to play already, and partially because most games drop in price quickly, and also they're often disappointing when there's hype. But Nintendo games don't really drop in price like that. So if I'm going to buy a game at launch, it's usually a Nintendo game, because you're not going to save anything by waiting even 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. Would I use it? I don't know. I'd think about it. I think. Yeah,
well, that's what the free trial's for. I'm not trying to sell it to you, but yeah, I sound like I am. I don't know why I said that. But yeah, it's I cancel. I didn't stay subscribed after I returned Bowser's Fury. I canceled it because, like I said, I have so many other games that I'm not looking to rent from them. But if
Yeah.
there was ever kind of like a short list that I wanted to just rent and be done with, because I like owning games too. I don't want to like not have any games to let friends borrow or just know that I have them. It's kind of nice to have a collection too. So it depends on your preferences on that. But
Okay. Well, the link to that will be in the show notes. So, and indeed the link to the Fudge Kitchen as well. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's Really Useful Podcast, the tech podcast for technophobes from makeuseof.com. We'll be back for a new show soon. Get in touch if you would like us to discuss any particular topic via Twitter or Facebook or through the site, and we'll speak to you soon. Until then, it's goodbye from us.